Neuro Creatives podcast with Josh Crafford.
At Nike, I was responsible for product creation. I was responsible for 5 of their most iconic shoes. It was the Air Force One, the Max 90, the Dunk, the Cortez, and the Air Max One. I'm dyslexic. I'm also colorblind. But I always had the confidence of if there's something that you want to do, you can do it. And if you work hard enough at it, you can get it done. You call it confidence. I literally call it determination. My biggest ground rule is be who you are. Be authentic to you. Know that you're great whoever you are.
Welcome to the Neuro Creatives podcast with your neurodivergent host, Josh Crafford. This is a positive podcast where we believe in no judgment of self and of others. We remove the societal stigmas of can't and don't by focusing on strengths, mental wellness, and empowerment. Together, we are building a culture of safety and inclusion where no one has to mask. Joining me here today is Omari Leggett. Very excited to have the opportunity to have you share about your experiences, your stories, your messaging. I've been just thoroughly impressed with everything that I've gotten to know about you over time from a professional standpoint as well as a personal standpoint. So with that said, I'd just like to go over your bio, maybe jump in a little bit there and then ask you some questions about your different life experiences and messages.
Sounds like a plan. If you get anything wrong, I'll let you know.
All right. So with nearly 2 decades of experience in brand and product marketing, Omari stands as a transformative figure in the industry. Throughout his illustrious career, he has consistently propelled marketing organizations to new heights, earning a distinguished reputation for nurturing the leaders of tomorrow. Omari's career includes several leadership roles at Nike, and Vice President of Global Marketing at Beats Electronics, which was acquired by Apple. Okay, I want to pause right there. I know you're humble. You just glaze right over it. Just happened to work at Nike. It's not just happened to work at Nike. Can you talk a little bit more about that and then Beats by Dre as well? I just love to dive into learn more.
Yeah, no, I can share more. So I worked at Nike probably about just under 10 years. The first couple of years, I did things from global footwear strategy, where I worked with each of the categories, developing their 3 to 5 year out marketing plans and how they wanted to reach their consumers. I then went into merchandising. And so I worked in sportswear, which is their off-court or off-field type of stuff. And I actually was responsible for North America and any retro basketball or running and training. I was responsible for deciding which accounts got what and how much for the US. And US was about 70% of the business. Then I ended up going and working in the global product creation engine. And again, I was responsible for 5 of their most iconic shoes. It was the Air Force One, the Max 90, the Dunk, the Cortez, and the Air Max One. And I was responsible for ensuring that these shoes came to the marketplace in the best way. And so I worked with a team of designers, a team of developers, and a team of product marketers to make sure that we always presented the best format for these shoes. After that, they shipped me out to Japan. So I ran product creation for about a year, and that was about 65% of all product that went into Japan was designed and created for the Japanese market. And that was my team. And so I had about 50 folks that worked for me from development to engineering, design, and marketing. And probably only 2 of them spoke English. So they told me 50% of your team speaks English. And I got there and about 50% of them knew a couple English words. Speaking was a little different until I got to know them. And that was part of the biggest learning. I think they may come up in some questions later, but it was one of those things where understanding the culture, playing soccer with some of the guys, like breaking down some of the walls and barriers of communication, we were able to really transform some things. And I actually ended up doing quite well there and really enjoying the culture of Japan. Left Japan, as you mentioned, I worked for Beats by Dre. Headphones and speakers. I did that for about 5 years. Within my first year, we reset the team. And so we had about 25 people, went down to about 8, and I rebuilt the team up to 18. So built a team in China, a team in Europe, as well as in Brazil. And we had a team of about 100 to 108 folks at the time that we got acquired by Apple. And I stayed there through the transition period, helping things transition, and then decided that it was time for me to move on and do something that I really enjoyed. I got to the point where I just didn't enjoy what I was doing.
Lots there. Thank you for diving into that. Lots there, meaning I know each one of those little bullet points has tons of stories to it. So if you're in charge of like retro and shoes and everything, did you have a favorite shoe, or do you have a favorite shoe? And it doesn't have to be Nike, but
I do, and it is Nike, and I did work on it. No, so no. My favorite shoe of all time, most people know, is it's the Air Max 90, and it's the original infrared color of the Air Max 90. And so I usually keep at least two or three pairs of new Air Max 90s in my closet. And so most times, if people see me in pictures, if they're looking at my shoes, I'll say 8 out of 10 times I'm wearing a pair of Max 90s. Yeah, even to this day. Yeah.
I'm sure my son knows what those are. He's a sneakerhead. He just got, I think it's his first pair of Jordans. He's 14. He spent hours learning how to lace them perfectly. Yeah.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
Okay, I want to take a second to talk about culture and communication, because you and I share a connection of Japan. So if you moved to Japan to lead and run Japan, did you speak Japanese before that? Had you been to Japan before that? Or did you just dive right in?
So I have been to Japan twice for market travel, and that was with Nike to understand the marketplace years before I mentioned the job. I did not speak Japanese at all. I had a Japanese tutor when I was there. Learning languages for me is always challenging, but I can always learn a couple words. And so what actually allowed me to connect with them is the fact that they knew I was taking lessons. So I told my whole team, hey, I'm taking lessons, right? I was like, I'm going to learn what you're saying, right? And I would go into meetings, and most of the time I wouldn't understand fully everything the conversation was going on, but I'd understand words and I could interject certain words. And they knew that I was trying to learn their language, which made them okay with sharing their ability to speak English. One of the things that I learned through the team that I worked with is the Japanese dedication to perfectionism. And they like to be right and actually at least feel like they're doing the right thing. And so when they're speaking English, sometimes if they're not comfortable and they feel like they're making mistakes, they just would rather not even try. They saw me trying to speak Japanese. So I'm like, your English is better than my Japanese. So let's try it. That actually helped to kind of tear down some of the walls. And then there are times when I would draw pictures on a napkin and they would go back to their laptop and they would send me an email because we couldn't quite get to what we wanted to do. But there are ways around it, right? Sitting in my office and with a pen and drawing, this is what I want. And then he goes back, he goes to his desk and it's like, sends me an email in English. Hey, I understand now. This is what I will send you, but unafraid to have that conversation with me in person. But you figure out ways to deal with it. Yeah.
I like that you use the word unafraid, because one of the things that was coming to mind for me when you were talking about that is you have to have a high level of self-confidence and knowing your capabilities of, yeah, you can drop me off in a foreign country and I'll be okay, and put me in charge, right? Yeah. So kind of blending that and beats together, it's like, wait, we went from 25 down to 8, and then you're in charge of rebuilding it. Pretty daunting task in a lot of people's eyes, probably. Where did the self-confidence come from to say, yeah, I got this?
Yeah, well, I don't know. That's a damn good question. I don't know. No, I think I played sports growing up. And so I played soccer since I was probably 5. And through playing soccer, I learned about dedication, hard work, and teamwork. And so more than anything, more than notion of confidence, it was the notion of how to work as a team. I played soccer all the way through college. And so through high school, we were quite successful. I ended up playing at Howard University. So I played Division I I had multiple offers, and I had a pretty successful career. Decided not to play professional because I decided to focus on other things. However, I was trained to win, essentially, right? But it's trained to win as a team. I wasn't trained to win as an individual. And so when you think about me going to Japan, it was literally, how do I make this team work? Is what I was thinking. And honestly, I did it through connecting with some of them through playing soccer. When I got to Beats, it was, how do I make a team? How do I build a team? And I started with finding a couple key people that actually worked at Nike that I thought were super successful, but weren't given the right opportunities. And so, like, all right, well, cool, let's give you the opportunity that you need. And then they actually helped me grow the team, but it was actually balancing like my ability to work as a team and know what it looks like to win and how much work it takes at times to actually get there that actually pushed me through more so than confidence in some ways, to be honest. I don't know if I had the level of confidence that I probably needed at certain times. It was more the desire not to fail than it was the confidence to succeed.
Yeah, that's great. I know someone, if you're ever looking to publish the book, Train to Win as a Team. I think that's a bestseller right there. I love that. And then I think part of my success as well, I loved it when you said you were able to find people who weren't given the opportunity, kind of like those diamonds in the rough that might be overlooked or might have skills and talents that are overlooked. But you can recognize that in people and you can bring them with you and bring them up with you. I think with a lot of neurodivergent people, they are those diamonds in the rough that have those skills and talents outside of the status quo.
Yeah.
That can be recognized by other neurodivergent people.
Yeah, no, I think it's interesting. And I'll be honest, like we did good and bad at that at sometimes when we were at Beats, to be honest. And we got better, much better toward the end. And if I looked at how me and who was my boss at the time, who was also still a very close friend of mine, how we actually build organizations now, it's based on what we learned at Beats. But like in the beginning, he was kind of a odd, like kind of pin that didn't necessarily fit at Nike. He came from Nike before, and he was super talented, but talented beyond where they were ready to put him, and he just didn't fit. He went to Beats and got like this open like palette for him to kind of figure out. And so we were figuring that out, and we built that together. Then we started looking for who are the other people that may not fit, but just need to understand where their greatness is. And so part of what we did whenever we interview was, number one, what are you most passionate about? Like, so we wanted people who were passionate about something. You can be passionate about cats, about gardening. You can be passionate about whatever, but you need to be passionate about something. That way, you know how to translate that into somebody else who might be passionate about headphones. It's the ability to be passionate about something. And then it's kind of, what are you really good at? What's your superpower? What are you good at? Right. And so we ended up balancing that, and we created positions for people. Like, it wasn't that we had to fit somebody in positions. We were building a new org. And so we were able to create positions for certain people. We also failed on that. We weren't patient in some cases. And there were some people that were like, this is not going to work. And really and truly, they would have worked in a different capacity than what we had them in. And we actually moved too quickly in some people's cases, if I'm honest. Or it just might have been, it wasn't the right fit because they went to other places and they excelled. Like, they actually found the right place for them. And many times we were the right place because we were able to move things around. And sometimes we were a little bit too impatient, and we actually moved before we should have with a couple people. Yeah.
Thank you. I love diving into that. The passions and superpowers. Yeah, those should be interview questions by everybody.
You say that now. Talk to the people who I interviewed who hated being interviewed. They're, man, I didn't understand your interview. You talked to my assistant. She was so upset. Like, it was like 2 minutes into the interview, I put her resume to the side and I was like, all right, well, let's just really talk. I don't really care about that. Let's talk about blah, blah, blah. And she's like, well, I knew I didn't have the job because you didn't even look at my resume. I was like, but your resume wasn't important. I read your resume before you got to the interview. And so many people miss that. And it's like, I look for different things. I look like, if you didn't have the things right on your resume, you wouldn't be sitting in front of me. And then so now you're sitting in front of me. I'm not going to walk through what the hell you already have on your resume. I want to know about you, who you are, what makes you tick. Like, what are you capable of doing? And that's where a lot of people got a little bit uncomfortable, but I enjoyed seeing them uncomfortable because it was
Yeah.
questions they hadn't been asked before. And it was the way that they actually were able to really be themselves and be authentic to who they were was what actually put them in the right place to actually be on this team that we were building. Because our
Yeah.
team, it was more important for you to be authentic to who you were so that you added to the culture of the team so that we could all be successful than for you to recite what you were supposed to say, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. Unscripted interviews. Yeah, I love that. Let's have a human conversation. See how you handle being put in an uncomfortable situation. When I interviewed for the VP of Corporate Learning and Development at a Fortune 200 company, and I was moving from a completely different area, one of the questions from the chief HR officer was, so what was your GPA in high school? And for me, it was like 2.7, but I couldn't tell him that. I said, you know what? I did disclose to him, and I think this is the first time at work, especially someone that senior. I said, you know what? I have some learning differences. So my GPA wasn't great, but I was captain of my football team. I was vice president of my class. I was volunteer student of the year. Can we talk about those things? And he's like, absolutely. He's like, so you got leadership. Great. I'll take that over a 4.0 any day.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I got the position.
And sometimes I wonder the angle of the question. Like, was the question set so that you would actually say, "Hey, you know what? I stand on my own 2 feet. My GPA doesn't matter." Like my high school, because honestly, my high school GPA was a 2.78, right?
Yeah.
But ask me what I had in college. Like my college GPA was a 3.8. And
Yeah.
then went to grad school and I was on the dean's list, whatever. But nevertheless, the GPAs don't matter as much as what you were able to accomplish, and like the fact that you actually had people that supported you. You were a leader on your teams, and you were doing multiple other things outside of just school. But he might have been asking you that for that question, so for how you answered it. It might have been like, "Yo, like, what was your high school GPA?" Or if you have somebody who said, "Hey, I was a 4.1." And it's like, yeah, maybe that's not the right type of person that I want. I want somebody who's comfortable with who they are.
Yeah. I did go back to him afterwards, and I said that was, I wasn't expecting that. He said, that's exactly why I asked him. He said, I ask everybody at least one question that no one is expecting, and it's how you handle a non-memorized, non-practiced, non-rehearsed question.
Yeah.
And he's like, and you did good. So here we are.
Yeah.
I haven't even gotten through your bio yet.
Yeah. Well, yeah, but we did. We got through more of it than you think. So yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
But I do want to hit on a couple things here too, so that we can dive deeper if
Yep.
you want. So after transitioning away from the corporate world, you founded Penciled Counseling, an executive coaching agency dedicated to nurturing future leaders. And I can contest that Omari is an absolutely phenomenal coach. So if you ever need an endorsement, there you go. His education includes a BBA from Howard University, where apparently you played soccer and you were damn good at it, and an MBA from University of Chicago, along with professional coaching certifications with lots of initials.
Yes. Yes. Well said. That's all I'll say. Well said. Yes.
Yeah. Omari is excited to join Wake Forest University as an adjunct professor of the practice, where he will share his industry insights and passions for marketing with aspiring professionals. They're a very lucky and fortunate group of people that will have that. His commitment to education and mentorship continues to shape the future of marketing, both in corporate worlds and academia. I love that, you give back. you give more than you get. I think you are the type of person that gets a lot from giving.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I get from giving. So yes, I think you hit on. I transitioned from corporate into founding Pencil Consulting, and it is about helping the next wave of leaders, whoever they are. I feel like I was quite successful. If you ask the people who work for me, and I tell them that I'm coaching, they're like, "Yeah, that makes sense. You always coach." Like it was something that I've always done throughout my career, but it actually really started to solidify itself as a career itself with Pencil. And then I also teach. And so I just started with Wake Forest. I've done adjunct roles at other universities, but as of now, I am with Wake and doing their online MBA courses and enjoying and engaging with those guys and helping them have a little reality of kind of what marketing actually looks like in the real world.
They're very lucky to have you. So I'm sure that would be a fantastic cause. All right, so I'm going to dive into a question here as far as what role, because this is talking neurodiversity, what role does neurodiversity play in your life?
So funny. So neurodiversity is somewhat of a new term for me, to be honest. Like I didn't grow up with the term. I don't even know if the term existed when I was
I don't think so. No.
But I grew up knowing that I was diagnosed as dyslexic, and that was probably in about the second or third grade that I got that diagnosis. But for the longest time, I resisted it and just fought back. And it was just like, hey, I never want to asterisk by my name of, hey, he had extra time on the test or he had blah blah. And like I looked at it as a disadvantage and in some ways looked at it in shame, to be honest. But I use my desire to just win and drive to continue to get through things. These days, I live with it, knowing and embracing it, and knowing that it's just part of me thinking differently. And sometimes I have to slow down to remind myself, hey, it's okay, relax, all right? You look at things a little differently, and that's okay. Take your time. Whereas in the past, I would have put pressure on myself. I'm also much more open with it these days. It's like a dirty secret for me, but nevertheless, it prohibited me because I wasn't really willing to acknowledge what it was, and I fought it. But these days, as I said, I embrace it, and I just know that I think differently, and I slow down. But I do like that's the role it plays in my life. Also plays the role in I played soccer, and so now I coach soccer for neurodivergent kids. And so there's a soccer program here in North Carolina with NCFC, North Carolina Football Club, that I coach with, and it's all neurodivergent kids from all different ranges, from age 5 to 13. And we teach like socialization and motor skills more so than winning. And so the fact that I know that there's so much importance about team and being around people, I use that to kind of bring those guys together. But that's the role it plays in my life these days. Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. And I think I've talked to dozens of quote unquote experts. There's one lady that works at a neurodivergent school, and she's been there for 30 years. And 30 years ago, she taught the students who are now parents, and their kids are coming back to the school. But one of the things that she said, every successful, and I've noticed this pattern through other people I've talked to, one of the things that every successful neurodivergent person, and like you said, there's shame and dirty secrets and anxieties and social stigmas. So there's a lot of negativity that we could already put on ourselves. The one thing that successful people have is just one voice of someone that they look up to or admire outside of their immediate family. And for me, I had two situations. One was my football coach and one was my science teacher. I am guaranteeing that you are going to be that voice for many of these young adults or children at this point. So I'm already giving you a future bravo and props. That's actually going to bring me to another question. So when you were a child, just about everybody has a pivotal life-changing moment before the age of 10. And then there's usually that person that helps guide you in that pivotal moment? We don't usually realize it at the time, but reflecting back, we do. So what would your pivotal before the age of 10 story be, and who helped guide you through that?
Interesting. You're right. There are a lot of kind of pivotal moments, so to speak. And if I look back, and you're saying kind of before 10, it probably would have been when I was in second or third grade. And so when I went to school, it was in like late 70s, and there were no neurodivergent classes and things of that nature. My mom was a librarian, and she had me reading before I even got to kindergarten. And that was also unusual back in the 70s. It's a norm now. But I had learned to read before, and she'd have me read books and ask me what I read, and she knew that I had read it. And so in kindergarten, they would put me in the first grade reading class. In the first grade, they put me in the second grade reading class. It wasn't until we got to second grade and two things happened. One, we had AG testing, which is academically gifted testing, as well as number two was we started reading out loud in class. And so I failed the AG test. Well, I didn't fail the AG test. You don't fail the AG test. You just weren't seen as gifted. I wasn't gifted.
But you were already reading well above
Yes,
your level,
which was a surprise to teachers, as well as my parents. The way my test scores came back. And then during class, during that same year, we were starting to read out loud. And during the middle of me reading out loud, I was laughed at by the class. And the teacher was like, "Hey, don't laugh, blah, blah, blah." But for me, it was very embarrassing for me. And I probably misread something. I'm sure I did. Like, that's part of me in my dyslexia. I'm sure I misread something. But the kids laughed at me. And so once I went home and putting two and two together, my mom actually put me in tutoring with a teacher there for after school named Miss Wyatt. And Miss Wyatt was the most wonderful lady ever. We worked on phonics and things of that nature, but more than anything, she kind of pushed me to explore my creativity. And so she pushed me to write books. And so I was writing books, and then I would have to illustrate for the books. And then, so it was like writing and drawing. And then we published these books. And quite frankly, I won several youth writing classes at that time. And so she rebuilt my confidence in myself, because my confidence was really shook at that point. And because I had other friends that were in the AG classes, and then I'm been laughed at, but Miss Wyatt helped reinforce my confidence. And through that, I felt like I could do anything. I didn't know, like at the time, my parents didn't say, "Hey, you're dyslexic." They just said, "Hey, go see Miss Wyatt." Miss Wyatt probably knew I was dyslexic very clearly, but nevertheless, she didn't care. She wanted me to learn, and so she pushed me forward. And through that allowed me to continue. I would say the one thing that remained, I still have a little bit of social anxiety. As much as I've been successful, I've done a lot of cool things, met a lot of cool people, influenced a lot of people. I presented in crowds of 100 to 1,000 when doing like sales meetings for Nike and things of that nature. But to this day, I still have the anxiety of somebody in the crowd laughing at me.
I can relate to that story. I can guarantee you, if someone's listening to this because the topic of neurodiversity, they can relate to that story, or that if they're listening for others. Being laughed at, I think public speaking is the number one fear of all humans, above snake, spider, heights, deaths, and it is that social judgment. So hooray for Miss Wyatt helping you out of that. So if there's a message to kids or people in general, if you are in a social situation where you feel you could get laughed at, did you ever figure out how to comfortably get through that, or how to tell yourself it's going to be okay? Did you ever get any hacks or tricks or any ways to anything that you'd like to?
No and yes. Yes and no. Yeah. And so, do I have any hacks outside of accepting who you are? And we'll talk about that throughout, I'm sure. But my biggest thing that allowed me to actually deal with it is to accept the fact that I have anxiety. Accept the fact that, hey, you know what? These things make you nervous. Cool. So prepare more for it. So it's more about preparation. But even through preparation, when you get up on stage, like I got my little cloth, so I wipe myself down. I'm prepared, right? I'm always prepared now because I'm aware. And so more than anything, if there's a hack, it's like don't be afraid and embarrassed of what it is that you're dealing with. Embrace it, whatever it is. And I have some anxiety. I embrace that now. I didn't before because what happens if you don't embrace it, if you have anxiety and you continue to get anxious and you're on stage and you're doing this and then you continue like, oh, wow, somebody's looking at me, boom, boom, boom. It's just a spiral. Once you know that you have anxiety and you say, hey, you know what? You're overreacting. You're being anxious. That's part of it. Oh, okay, cool. I know that's part of it. It's still happening, but I know that's part of it. I know it's not them. I know it's part me. So it's taking ownership of whatever it is and really embracing it, but at the same time addressing it by embracing it is what I would say. Yeah.
No, I love that. That's fantastic. Yes, it is. I know I'm gonna mess up. Like when I was reading your bio, reading out loud for me is my kryptonite. It's yes, I used to get laughed at. I used to refuse. If a teacher would tell me, hey Josh, read this long paragraph out loud, like, nope, not gonna do it. I have been sent to the principal's office for refusing to read out loud. And I'm like, okay, fine. I would rather do that. And now it's like, I know I'm going to mess up on reading your bio, but I'm okay with it. If I'm okay with it, others are going to be okay with it.
Right.
If I show that I'm not okay with it and fear and anxiety, and if I open that window to allow others to judge me because I'm judging me,
right.
then that's the downward spiral. But if I'm like, nope, I'm just going to keep going, then others are like, cool, we'll just keep going with you.
Yeah. It is what it is. It's like, hey,
Yeah.
you know what? I'm not great at reading out loud. Okay, what are you gonna do? You're gonna laugh at me because I'm not great at reading out loud when I just told you I'm not great at reading out loud? Hey,
Yeah.
you know what? I have anxiety. And I've told people when I present, hey, you know what? I sweat when I present. And so like just excuse me, right? It's accepting it, owning it. And so when it happens, there's no like, oh, look at it. No, actually I told you already. I know that. I know it. Just like, and so just owning it is my biggest hack, is being able to own whatever it is and embracing who you are. It's just who you are. And yeah, you can change and you can maneuver through it. But whatever you are in life, just owning it is the best hack for anything.
So what is something that comes easier to you than others? And how did you realize this? Because everybody has that superpower, right? Like you were saying with the interviews, what's your passion, what's your superpower? What's yours? And then how do others realize what theirs is?
Yeah, no, that's good. That's a good question. Um, I'm better at telling you what I do worse than other people than what I do better than other people. But what I do better than other people, I would say it's listening. Like I tend to be a better listener in my mind, and that is listening not just for understanding but also for emotion. And so I tend to understand people where they're coming from and have a little bit more empathy than most people do. That comes across in me being able to really bring more out of individuals. Like, so it's like, all right, well, cool. I'm listening. Tell me more. And I'm curious. And that actually has helped me a lot. I'll say I'm also very into details because of the way my mind works. Like, I need to hear every detail so that I can think through what's really going on. And so no detail is too small for me, and no detail is really overlooked by me. And that comes across in whether or not it's speaking or what people will tell you from working with me, whether or not it's at Nike or Beats and we're doing product stuff and product details. Because the other thing that we haven't talked about, but the other thing that I have is that I'm also colorblind. And so I'm responsible at Nike. I was responsible for product creation, but I can't tell you purple from blue, right? Which is
I mean,
wild.
that's one of the first things that I hear is like, okay, how For most people, I think it would be like, I can't go into product design because I'm colorblind. I can't go into XYZ because I have this. You know, they would use it as excuses. I love that you are able to do and accomplish everything that you have, where others would see excuses. What did you see it as?
I don't know. It's funny. So, like, if you go down that route, that goes really far. I would think it's my parents, to be honest. My parents, as much as they never, in my mind, overpraised me, they never told me that I couldn't do anything. It wasn't always like they were like, "Hey, you're great, you're great, you're great." Whatever I wanted to do, they always said you can do. Like we talked earlier, I played Division I soccer. The first time we went to my elementary school, I went in braces because I was bow-legged and I had to walk in braces up until the point I was 5. But I went on and played Division I soccer. Colorblind, I did color for and made product decisions for Nike and for, like, you call it 7 years. It was product decisions that I was making. And then same thing at Beats. Although I can't tell you what the difference is between blue and purple, if you showed me the two of them, I can tell you what looks good together. And I can tell you when they're different. I can tell you the difference between two things. More than most. I can tell you this white looks more yellow than this white. I can tell you this looks darker than that. I can tell you the difference, even though I can't name what that color is. I can tell you the difference between things. So, I'm dyslexic. I have problems with numbers, mixing numbers and words up. I went to University of Chicago, one of the most analytical MBA schools there is. But I always had the confidence of, if there's something that you want to do, you can do it. And if you work hard enough at it, you can get it done. But there have been a number of things that are just dichotomies of what I should be able to do versus what I desire to do, and then just having the will to push through it. You call it confidence. I literally call it determination. Like, it's just, I always had, nobody's going to be better than me. Nobody's going to beat me. I can do it just as well as anybody else can do it. And that's kind of what drove me. Yeah.
So sounds like determination's a superpower as well. One of the things I think that helps me stay centered is having my own personal ground rules, which I try to bring into what I'm doing. And those are no judgment, yes, and building off each other's ideas in a collaborative mindset, and then embracing rough and ugly to start. Otherwise, you're never going to start. So those are a couple things for me. As far as like ground rules for life or in principles, however you want to word it, what would that be for you?
I think that goes back, and that's why I'm sure this is going to come out in some way or another later. But it's all about being you, and it's knowing yourself, knowing your values. And when I say values, it's what's important to you and why. So some people will get like, oh, what are values? No, it's like literally just knowing what's important to you and knowing why that's important to you. And that allows you to really be you. And that's my biggest ground rule is be who you are, be authentic to you. Don't try to be somebody else. Don't feel as though that you're inferior or whatever. It's be you and know that you're great, whoever you are. The other piece is being grateful. Like, always be grateful. Like, and it sounds easy to say at a certain point in life that you can be grateful, but everybody has something that they can be grateful for, regardless of what their situation is. If you're waking up, you've got something to be grateful for because you at least have an opportunity to change whatever else is going on. And so you can be grateful. But I think too many times, even whether or not you're uber successful and you are just seeking whatever's next, is like, all right, cool. I'm XYZ, but I want that. Like, you're always climbing, always climbing. You're not grateful enough for what you actually have and what you've accomplished. Or for the person who hasn't accomplished anything, but actually still has the opportunity to accomplish and that they've actually gotten another chance to accomplish something else. Be grateful for where you're at. And so my two ground rules are be you, which means to know you, and then also kind of be grateful for whatever comes into your life.
I think those would be great chapters for your book. That's great. All right. So we talked pivotal moment when you were a kid. What about professional in your journey to where you needed to make a pivot that helped you get to where you were successful, whether at Nike or Beats or elsewhere?
Yeah, no, so interesting. So you mentioned something earlier. You mentioned when you were in your interview and he asked you about your GPA or whatever, and you're like, hey, you revealed that you had some learning challenges or whatever, right? I think my most pivotal moment was at Beats. And it was, so you're talking late in my corporate career, that I revealed and shared openly that I was dyslexic. And I did this to the leadership team at Beats by Dre. And part of the reason why was we were building a very unique team. And quite frankly, I had actually built the team. And part of building the team was making sure that individuals in that team set an environment for people to be themselves. And as much as I keep pushing people to be themselves, I was still holding who I was to myself. I was holding the fact that I read every email that I sent each one of those guys 5 to 10 times to make sure that it was accurate. Like, so that, like, I was holding the fact that whenever I presented, I had to do this and that. And so I actually was able to share the fact that I was dyslexic. And so once I shared that, that opened up everything for me because it allowed me not to hide behind anything. And that, but that was the first time. Um, I also have to say that I also had a very supportive boss at the time. And listen, the boss was one of my closest friends who brought me over to help and lead. But I knew that he trusted in me and believed in me regardless of who I was. And I felt comfortable sharing that. I say that because once I shared, then you start to hear the stories of other people on the team, right? And no, a lot of them didn't have neurodivergent stories, but they did have things that they were actually not necessarily open with sharing until after I did that. But by me sharing at Beats, it also allowed me to embrace who I was, that allowed me to be who I am now, outside of Nike, outside of Beats, but like in general, it made me feel like I was a whole person again. It made me feel like, all right, cool, I'm okay. Even if I actually have challenges on certain things that other people don't have challenges, and I think a little bit differently, and I do things a little bit differently, I still am okay. Because for the longest time, as I said, there comes a level of shame, or I brought on a level of shame to me for what I was dealing with. So that was a huge turning point in my professional journey, was being able to say it out loud, embrace it, and actually know that, okay, cool, it's okay. You just got to work through it. But like, it's something that is part of you. It's me being authentically me. And that was the first time that I was able to do that. And so that was a big turning point in my professional career.
I'm sure you helped impact a lot of people's lives at that later stage as well, because you set the stage, you trusted your boss. So your boss set the stage for you to be vulnerable, to open up and share your whole person. I know when we mask, there's so much psychological, emotional drain and energy and physical energy that it takes, like you said, reading through everything 5 or 10 times to make sure it's perfectly correct versus, oh, if you know what, if I do this twice, but I have 1 or 2 spelling errors, no one's going to judge me. It's not going out publicly, so it's okay. And then I love the fact that you said you opening up and sharing and proving that it's a safe space, because corporate culture is huge to me, and having safe and inclusive environments for everybody is one of my missions. And right, not everybody has to be neurodivergent, but everybody has challenges that are shameful or have some type of shame or anxiety tied to them. Doesn't have to be neurodiversity, but once a leader opens up and shows this is a safe culture to share, we all have some type of shame, we all have some type of challenges. Let's embrace those as a culture. And that's where the real work and the winning teams come from.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So no, it was a big one for me. As I said, it was a big one in terms of opening up for that team and unlocking that team to be open. And then as well as for me to continue to open up and just be okay with being who I was. So, yeah.
We are coming to a conclusion.
Okay.
And closing tradition.
What's your closing tradition, Josh?
Closing tradition. I'm going to give you an option. One could be, what is a simple life hack that you enjoy? You already shared a little bit about a life hack earlier. If you want to pick a different one, you want to dive into it, you can do that. Or you can have the option, I'm going to ask you for 2 words for our next guest that they will have to kind of mash together, that chooses this option, and put them together in some type of mashup that makes sense to this topic. Right. So I'm looking through here, and passion and superpowers are 2 of the things that I wrote down. So either give us a life hack or tie passions and superpowers together in a message to close out on.
Interesting. Okay. Yeah, I'll try a little bit of both, and you can and we can figure out whether or not I pass on either. No, it's always a pass or fail. No, I think understanding because it's part of my message to anybody is understanding who you are and being yourself. Part of it is understanding what your passions are and what your superpowers are, and knowing that you can't be everything to everybody. But at the same time, embracing your passions and your superpowers allows you to be who you are and to be great and to live in your own greatness. And so that's how I would use those 2 together in a sentence. And because I think they go hand in hand in some ways. It's figuring out your passions, figuring out your superpowers, and if you can figure out how they align, that's how you're successful in life, is actually by pairing those 2 together. Then the second question about life hacks, biggest life hack is continuous learning and growing, and continuous learning and growing to actually understand more about who you are, more so than learning to quote unquote learn. You learn to understand you so that you can apply whatever else you learn to your own life. It is a method of, like, literally learning never stops. And I tell you, audiobooks is a life hack, if you want to say that. I'll tell you, audiobooks have been a savior for me. The amount of books that I've actually been able to get through by listening that I could not if I had to try to read them is incredible. And it's just because you're absorbing information and you're moving forward and learning, but you're not stumbling through, or for me, I'm not stumbling through sentences and having to read them 5 times over again before I actually hear them. And so Audible, like audiobooks and Audible, is another life hack in terms of actually really and truly continuous learning and knowing who you are. Yeah.
Beautifully said. On both of them. There is not a pass fail, but you definitely passed.
There's always a pass fail. No, I'm teasing. No, that's it, man. I appreciate you giving me an opportunity to share a little bit more about my story, and I hope that whoever's listening, they can understand that being who you are and embracing who you are is the way to move forward. And regardless of what your circumstance is, you are who you are. And there's nothing wrong with who you are. You may be different in certain ways, and you may learn different, you may embrace things differently, but you're just different. Everybody's different. And everybody has something that's different. And so just learn who you are, embrace who you are, and continue to be great, and always try to win. Always try to win.
That's a good motto.
Don't tell the kids that. Oh, you're supposed to play it. But yes, but seriously, like, always try. And winning is different. That's a whole nother story. But always try to win.
Yeah. You want to be ahead of Nike or Beast Federation? Always try to win. That's exactly. That's how you get there. Right. All right, my friend. I totally appreciate you, your time, your stories. Thank you so much for sharing them. I'm sure if anybody actually ends up listening to this, you're going to inspire them.
No, there'll be a lot of people that will listen. Because I also believe in the things that you're doing, and the people who actually are going to follow and want to learn. I've learned from you, and I think many other people will learn from you as well. Yeah.
Thank you, Omari. Appreciate you.
Thank you so much for listening. You are honestly the reason that this podcast exists. If you'd like more information on today's guest, please see the show notes. Also, add a comment to let us know your thoughts. And please subscribe.